He's a frequent contributor to many programs, including here on TSN 690. It is Didier Ormejuste. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Very, very well. Thank you so much for taking some time today. You can also follow him on Twitter.com/Didier RDS. All right, well, the big news, obviously, that people are talking about is a tentative agreement between the CFL and CFLPA. Still got to be ratified, voted on. But from what we're seeing on Twitter, as reported by others, the players aren't happy about this. What are you hearing?
Well, I mean, pretty much the same thing, that the players aren't really happy with the deal. But, I mean, who can blame them? I mean, you have to think back about when the announcement was made about that new TV deal with TSN. A lot of players thought that, their income would increase from that TV deal, that the revenues would increase. And also, when you look at all the stadiums that have been built or are getting built right now across the CFL, there's clearly more revenue coming in. So obviously the players, thought all along that this would mean that, their salary would go higher. And right now, they're really disappointed because, it's really not what they envisioned a couple of years ago when, the TV deal was announced.
Didier Ormejuste from RDS joining us here on the program talking about this situation. So from the CFL's perspective, it's a great deal then, obviously.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's a victory by the owners. There's no doubt about that. The only question is what did the players, had to lose by going on strike, by sacrificing that first preseason game? Most of the evaluation made by the coaches, are made during practices anyways. So, it doesn't appear like the CFLP was really ready to sacrifice. I know it would have been, a bunch of problems, logistic-wise, where would the players would have stayed and so forth. But, a couple of weeks ago, the CFLP said that they were ready to have to deal with those issues if they were to go on strike. They said that they were, but were they really? I'm not so sure about it. But really, the players didn't have anything to lose by going on strike, at least for a week, and see what happens. I mean, there's no way they would have, worse deal than what's on the table right now, I don't think.
All right, let's move on to the Montreal Alouettes. You've been covering the team, obviously. In terms of the roster right now, we always hear Jim Popp saying that the roster is just as talented as any other roster in the league. Is that the same view that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even last year, that's one of the main reasons why, one of the many reasons why Dan Hawkins got fired last year, because how talented that roster was, and it still is, very talented roster. If you look at the wide receiver position, I mean, it's unbelievable, the athletes that they have there. Even some rookies who are in camp right now are doing really, really well. So yes, it is an extremely talented players. There's not really a bunch of open spot really on that roster when you look at the depth chart, except for middle linebacker with the departure of Shane Emery for the Toronto Argonauts. And now Bear Woods got injured last week, got a hamstring injury. But other than that, I mean, the depth chart is pretty set. I mean, it seems at least like it's pretty set. So we'll have to see. But yes, I totally agree with Jim Bob. I mean, this is really a talented football team. But the question is, obviously, are they going to be able to mesh together? Are they going to be able to gel together? And, Tom Higgins hasn't coached in a while. I know he's been around the game. But, he hasn't coached in a while. So it'll be interesting to see. But that team is talented. And, for the first time in a long time in Montreal, we kind of don't know what to expect out of that talented group compared to the previous years where the team had Anthony Calvillo, Troy Smith showed, great things at the end of regular season last year during that playoff game against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. But there's a lot of unknown, and, with the unknown usually comes excitement, on the side of the fans. So it'll be interesting to see how the team plays, on June 28th in Calgary.
You mentioned the wide receiving core. Obviously, some injuries to overcome there. We've heard about Dave Stala in the past recovering from something. And Jamel Richardson, I've seen pictures of him now wearing a helmet. I mean, that's exciting for Alouettes fans. How's he looking?
Well, he's wearing a helmet, but he's not wearing shoulder pads.
Yeah, I know.
On the field with his teammates. So, How does he look? I mean, listen, he hasn't been practicing yet. Still rehabbing from his knee injury that he had last year. So right now, I mean, talked to General Manager Jim Pop. He said that he didn't know if Richardson would be ready for the beginning of the regular season. It doesn't seem like he will be. It was the same thing with Brendan Whitaker, if you remember, last year. He was also coming off an ACL injury. So, but, whether they're with or without Jamel Richardson, that wide receiver group is really, really going to be talented no matter what.
Didier, you mentioned Brandon Whitaker coming off the knee injury and injury problems the last couple of years. Is there even more pressure on him now, given the fact that Terrell Sutton played so well for the Alouettes down the stretch last season?
I think so. As you mentioned, I mean, Sutton rushed for 142 yards in the Eastern semifinal against Hamilton last year. And you have to remember, Brandon Whitaker in 2011, before he started getting injured, was one of the most explosive players in the CFL. I mean, obviously rushing the football, catching the ball coming out of the backfield, also blocking-wise. I mean, there's nothing that he couldn't do on the football field. But that was 3 years ago. And then since then, got injured in 2012. Last year got also injured. So we haven't seen a dominant Brandon Whitaker in a long time. So, remains to be seen if he can gain his form back. But the main thing for him, he is talented. There's no doubt about that. But he has to remain healthy. But again, for the Alouettes, we're talking about how talented that roster is. Well, that's another example. If Whitaker, is not able to regain his form, his 2011 form, I mean, Terrell Sutton is there, and he showed us how good of a back he is. So, there's a lot of depth on that roster. There's no doubt about that.
Now, in terms of rookies or first-year players with the Alouettes who may be coming from other places, who's been the most impressive for you so far this camp?
Well, I don't want to brag, but there's a guy from the alma mater, University of Toledo, a wide receiver, Kenny Stafford, who really has been playing well. I've only seen 4 practices. I was only in camp for the first 2 days of training camp. I'm going back to Lennoxville tomorrow morning to see 2 more practices. But Kenny Stafford, who actually was with the team last year at this time of the year during training camp, and played really well during the preseason, got injured. The Alouettes decided to release him, and then he was picked up by the Calgary St. Peters at the end of the regular season. And for some reason, I don't know why, but they ended up releasing him. So he's really talented. He has really shown us some nice things during the practices that I saw. But again, wide receiver position is so deep. It remains to be seen if he's going to be able to make the team, and then after that, to actually get on the field during games.
Game Points here on TSN 690. We're just wrapping up with Didier Ormejuste of RDS, talking some Montreal Alouettes. Stefano.
Didier, how do the Alouettes plan to replace Scott Flory, who, of course, went into retirement? Are there going to be some question marks early on for the offensive line, or they look as strong as ever?
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any question marks on the offensive line. The reason is pretty simple. I mean, Flory got injured early in the season last year. And, the Alouettes were able to replace him, the guard position, the right guard position. And, so I don't think it's going to be an issue. I mean, they also lost Andrew Woodruff, who retired after suffering from concussions. And they also have a Christian Matt, former first-round pick in 2010. He's been, waiting 4 years, mostly on the practice squad. Last year he ended up starting because of all of those injuries on the offensive line, and he played really, really well. So I don't think, the retirement of Woodruff and Scott Flory is going to be an issue. Perhaps on the leadership side, losing Flory and also Anthony Calvillo. But again, Calvillo missed most of the season last year. So this group of players is already used of playing without Anthony Calvillo and also without Scott Flory.
He is from RDS. You can follow him on twitter.com/DidierRDS for the latest on the Alouettes in the CFL. Didier Ormejuste, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.